Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Today we have a video that I'm incredibly excited about because not only are we going to be unboxing the Nutrimill Harvest Grain Mill, but I'll be walking you through my first impressions and my very first time ever using a grain mill. Then at the end of this video, I'll pop in after a bit of time has passed, like a week or two, and I'll give you an update about how I'm feeling about the whole process of grinding my own grains. I also need to quickly mention that I broke the lens on my camera, so right now I'm filming on my iPhone. I hope the quality is good, I hope you can hear me, but that's just what we're working with right now. So let's get started. Bought this mill with my own money. I've received nothing and have no agreement to receive anything from Nutrimill because of this video. I've been eyeing this mill since April, but couldn't quite make myself pull the trigger on purchasing it until a few weeks ago when Nutrimill offered $100 off its original price. I selected the powdered sugar option to go best with our current kitchen scheme. Visually, this meal is pleasing to the eye. Its sleek, minimal design keeps it cute while being a constant present on my counter. This mill fits perfectly underneath my kitchen cabinets due to its compact design. However, its design is also a potential drawback. Its very modern style may not fit into a collected vintage kitchen, but we have other modern conveniences on our counters, so it doesn't really bother me. The operation of the mill is incredibly straightforward. There is an on switch and a dial. Turning the dial clockwise versus counterclockwise will grind your grains finer or coarser. The directions are also very simple to follow. Turn on the mill before pouring grains into hopper, and then adjust the grind with your dial. It's also advised to grind in 10-minute increments. Our first grind, which is the cleaning. So I'm sending 2 cups of rice through the mill, trying to adjust to an appropriate flour fineness setting. And then this flour will be discarded just to make sure anything from the factory is out of the mill and this mill is ready to go. And then we're going to hop right into our second grind, which is hard white wheat berries for some bread. It's also worth a note that you must have a mixing bowl to work with this mill. You need something that the flour can be deposited into. It's important to mention that this freshly milled flour is warm to the touch. Let's quickly talk about a few of my first impressions. Firstly, I'm not sure that I ground the flour fine enough, but we will find out in just a few minutes for you, an hour or so for me, when we make our first loaf together. Yeah, I think it's too coarse. Secondly, and I'm sure that this is just a part of the process and I don't see it as a negative, I just noticed it, so I thought I would mention it. There is a flour kickback, like a noticeable amount of finer grain flour kind of just in the air around the bowl as the mill is milling. It's not an incredible amount. It's not like you're wasting a bunch of flour that's not making it into the bowl. It's just as it's milling and as it's depositing into the bowl, there's some kickback because it has to go a few inches, you know? Just that I mention it, doesn't bother me, but I noticed it. Another thing to note is that this hopper really only holds 3 to 4 cups of grains at a time. So if you're making a big batch of bread, you will be needing to add more grains to the hopper multiple times. I knew that when I purchased this that could be a drawback for some people. At the moment, it doesn't bother me, but we'll see in 2 weeks if that's the same. Now that's all I have at the forefront of my mind right now. Pretty positive. It's easy to use, not overwhelming. I would classify it as beginner friendly since I'm a beginner. And yeah, so since I'm feeling positive about it, let's try and cook this bread loaf. To test out our hard wheat, I'm following Grains and Grits sandwich loaf recipe for freshly milled flour. Instead of following the full recipe, I halved the ingredients. I linked her recipe in the description box. Now first, I want to mention something that has nothing to do with the mill itself. Instead, it relates to the wheat berries. Maybe this is common knowledge, but it never crossed my mind until I experienced it, and that is the smell of the wheat berries. I didn't grow up on a farm or near one, so I can only compare this scent to my experiences at petting zoos and county fairs. But to me, the wheat berries smell like livestock feed. Now, this isn't a gross, dirty smell. It's more of a natural, warm grain smell. Do with that what you will, just thought I'd share it since it surprised me. It's also important to note that this smell is completely baked out of the bread. I only noticed it when milling the grains. Here you'll see that some time ran away from me. I'm so used to sourdough taking hours to rise that I didn't check on this yeast loaf soon enough. I just tucked in those edges a bit before sending the loaf into the oven. And I was pleasantly surprised with the success of this loaf. It had integrity, incredible flavor, it toasted and grilled up well. Such a solid sandwich loaf, even if the flour could have been a little finer. To test out our soft white wheat, I'm following Grains and Grits recipe adaptation of Jill Winger's biscuit recipe from her book, The Prairie Homestead Cookbook. Here you'll see the mill migrating a little bit as it grinds on my counter, and that wasn't an issue when I was grinding it on my dining room table, so I think that's probably just my counter's uneven or something. Now, a key component here is to sift your flour once it's been milled. I found this flour sifter at a thrift store and it was a total dud. So after that disappointment, I just used one of our mesh strainers to get the job done. It was cool to unearth the bran from the flour, but it took me more than 5 minutes to sift all 8 cups of flour, and it started to feel like a chore by the end of it. Any extra flour and the wheat bran is stored in a jar in the fridge or the freezer. This recipe made 16 biscuits for me, so I baked 8 and froze the remainder, just to see the differences when the biscuits are baked from frozen. I heard this tip for making biscuits that easily pull apart, and that is to fold the dough over and lightly press it once you've rolled it out. This technique was a success in my kitchen. Here are some of my final thoughts a few weeks later. 2 characteristics that really draw me to this mill are the cost and storability of wheat berries in comparison to that of flour. Milling your own flour also cultivates a more direct connection to your food. Now, what could be perceived as a negative from milling your own flour is that depending on your recipe, milling your own grains for it may add 10 to 15 minutes to your process, especially as a beginner. Maybe as you get more familiar with the mill and the whole process, the additional amount of time could decrease. But from the beginning, you should know that more time is going to be added to your bread making process. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I hope this video will help you discern whether or not this grain mill is the right one for you and your family. Thank you so much again, and I will see you next time.